week began, if you remember, with Winter Storm Juno dominating all the news. Remember the beginning of this week? And boy, computer weather models were being analyzed and updated hourly. There were reporters everywhere. I got a big kick out of Don Lemon at CNN riding around in the blizzard mobile, they called it, up and down the empty, deserted streets of New York City, right? And all the elected officials and the public safety officers and the emergency managers and the road crews and power companies were ready to meet the storm, and they were ready to help the public through it. And they did. They did. They were all right there. Today comes a gospel story about a storm and a song from Jeremy Camp about Jesus being right there with us in our storms. Continuing our winter camp out, I see some more flannel shirts out there. And what we're doing, we're just in the winter months, we're gathering on Sunday mornings in the light of Christ to warm up together around His good word and good news for us. And we're using the songs of a Christian contemporary artist, Jeremy Camp. So there's a little pun we're working in there. That's our winter camp out. And today's gospel story is from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 4. The same evening, Jesus suggested they cross over to the other side of the lake. With Jesus already in the boat, they left the crowd behind and set sail, along with a few other boats that followed. As they sailed, a storm blew in. The winds whipped up huge waves that broke over the bow of the ship, filling it with so much water that even those experienced sailors were terrified. They were sure they were going to sink. Jesus was back in the stern of the boat, sound asleep on a cushion. The disciples shook him awake. Shouting over the storm, they said, "Jesus, Master, don't you care that we're going to die?" Jesus got up, shouted into the wind, commanded the waves. "That's enough. Be still." And immediately the wind died down to nothing, and the waves stopped. And Jesus looked at His disciples and said, "How can you be so afraid after everything you've seen?" The disciples were still afraid, still coming to grips with what had happened, what they'd seen. And they turned and asked one another, "Who is this Jesus, that He even has the power over wind and waves?" Well, there was no Mark Seeley, Ian Leonard, or Dave Dahl to help them predict and forecast that storm that night on the Sea of Galilee. Just imagine how tired Jesus must have been after that long day of ministry, that He continued to sleep as the black clouds rolled in and it thundered and there was lightning and the wind whipped up the waves and the boat started to rock, and still He slept. How tired our Jesus was. Our Lord had taught to the crowds and healed and fed them. And then He slept right through this storm. Even as the waves started to swamp the boat, even as these experienced fishermen panicked. There's an expression that defines courage this way. Courage is fear that has said its prayers. I'll say that again. Courage is fear that has said its prayers. Today's gospel story deals with that interplay of faith and fear. The disciples woke Jesus. He shouted down the storm, and then, looking at them all drenched and shivering, His next words must have stung them. "How can you be so afraid?" Jesus asked, "after everything you've seen?" What do you think Jesus meant by that?